So, interesting comment by Jim McDonnell today, or shall I say a couple of days ago now, about how he thinks that Labour will be able to overtake the Tories in the polls. Now, currently, Labour are behind by about 12 points. Now, it goes on to say that the whole issue that is before Jeremy Corbyn was elected was that we were 12 to 14 points behind in the polls, and by May of the following year we were either just behind or level ahead of the Tories in the polls. Then we had a coup in the leadership elections, and in the last 18 months we spent half of them in leadership elections. People don't want to vote for a divided party. We know that, and that's why we're behind in the polls. So I do think that is a reason why, a lot of the reason why Labour is behind in the polls, but I also think that there's a bit of actual political rumblings going on. As you may or may not know, there is a by-election for a MP seat in Sutherland. Now, UKIP have put their new leader, Paul Nuttall, who might get disbarred from this because he basically, you've got to put your address at that time that you sent in your application, and at that time he was not at the address he claimed he was living at Sutherland, and by law you have to do that. So he could get struck off from this by-election altogether because, well, he cocked up basically. Now it'll be interesting to see who wins in this by-election. Not only that, but the other thing that I think that hasn't been discussed is that in Rotherham, a council that has always been predominantly Labour, in another by-election for a seat there, a Lib Dem councillor got in for the first time ever. And, you know, bravo to that guy, because I'd love to sit down and actually have a talk with him, which I think will be quite interesting. So I might try and arrange that. But he really was quite a somewhat dramatic victory, because they have been completely red for, well, since I've been alive, and since probably even before that. And it's been the same where I live, in Barnsley as well. You get the occasional independent, and Penistone votes Conservative, but apart from that, that's it. There's no massive changes. So he also goes on to say that once we are past Brexit, we'll unite the Labour Party. We'll be back on our agenda, and you'll see. I think that we'll have a significant impact on the political debate in this country, which will mean that we'll go back in front of the Tories in polls over the next year. So it's difficult to tell, but as he said, we'll see within a year. We'll see what happens. I mean, at the moment, the UK is in a massive turmoil, and he brings this up again. I think the Stoke will be like every other by-election at the moment. It'll be masked by the Brexit issue. I think the issue of Brexit is dominating politics at the moment, and he's right, it is. But there's a whole range of other issues, such as what's happening in the NHS, and he's right there. Brexit has dominated politics for the last few months, and of course it'll be important in the coming months as well. But actually other issues are beginning to emerge. You saw this with the NHS, and I think it will be increasingly true. And he's right, because Brexit is going to unleash a cascade of other issues. And once Article 50 goes, whoo, yeah, be prepared, because that is going to unleash absolute miasma of stuff. So, do you think that John McDowell is right? Do you think Labour will increase the polls? I think, to be honest, if they can prove, and if Jeremy Corbyn can prove that his party is behind him and united, then I certainly think Labour will pull ahead of the Tories in the polls? Or do you think that he's living in La La Land? At the moment, I'm probably with him, because I think that if Corbyn can unite the party, he will start pulling ahead in the polls, and I think you will start to see a big movement again back towards Labour. I've said this before, I'm not 100% for Jeremy Corbyn, but I do like him quite a lot. I like a lot of his policies, and I think that, to be honest, he's quite a genuine politician. So, there you go, ladies and gents. Do you think that Mr. McDonnell is right? Or do you think that he's living in a fantasy alternative universe?